Greetings, flesh creatures. It is I, Megatron. On behalf of TFYLP, I want to congratulate you for listening to the most refined collective podcast on this miserable little planet Earth. Yes. Here you'll find knowledgeable fans discussing every aspect of Transformers and beyond. Now, enjoy the show while I continue my path to complete conquest of all of you miserable biological entities. Predacons, terrorize!
Hi, welcome to TFYLP, episode 563. We are live tonight. It is Wednesday, January 24th. I'm Lucas. I'm joined tonight by Phil.
Hey there.
Were you, I thought you were going to be doing a bit there or something, Phil.
That's man, just had to just get in there, you know.
And Anna.
Good evening.
And Christian.
What up?
So, apparently Zaldron thinks we already changed the topic.
Did we?
First off, okay, I think we should just not have a topic ever. So in that way, when we go off topic, it's not actually off topic, it's on topic.
We're a Transformers show about nothing.
So he thinks that we won't be able to not talk about the little bit of news we got earlier today.
Oh, what was the news? Sorry, I've been busy.
We
See,
can not talk about it.
Yeah,
Just
it's easy.
Just don't say it.
Lucas doesn't even know what it is.
Yeah,
I'm going to
see,
get
there you
distracted
go.
by our actual topic.
Yeah.
Are we talking about
I
the
think
live
we'll be
stream?
fine.
Is that?
Oh, you ruined it.
Oh, you do know. You pretend. You
It was-
feigned ignorance.
We got the
Jeez.
news that there will be news.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
stream on
That's
Tuesday.
pretty
We'll
much
talk
it.
about it next week. I promise we will. And I'll be here to guide you through it, Zaldron. I promise.
There you go.
Guide us through it? Who needs to be guided through it? They're just going to be like, there's a thing coming. Deal with
And everyone's
it.
going to be mad or happy, and I will help everyone deal with their emotions.
What am I, like Aaron Rodgers on an ayahuasca retreat? Did I need like a guide to help me through it?
That's what Christian is trying to become. He wants to become your spiritual Transformers guide.
I am the most qualified to help anyone with their emotions here, right?
I mean, don't other people have degrees in that thing?
Not this one. I'm an experimental psychologist. I don't know nothing about emotion.
Hey, see, there you go. I had nearly a minor in sociology.
There you go. Totally.
All I know about is
qualified.
cold, hard data.
Zaldron
be qualified to
says,
teach it.
Christian, that you can be our Cobra commander.
I will not. I will not do that. My voice isn't shrill enough.
Will you be our fumbles then?
I don't know what that is.
That's a robot chicken G.I. Joe joke.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely know that for my love of Robot Chicken and G.I. Joe.
Wait, you don't watch
Come
Robot
on, man.
Chicken?
And
I think it was
I
before
actually
its
haven't
time.
watched it in years, but you know.
what's our topic, Lucas?
Anywho, oh, we have a topic.
Yes.
Okay. Well, before we get to the topic that we supposedly have, I was gonna mention, Phil. Like, have you been enjoying reading the comics lately?
Yes. Quite a bit.
Because I haven't kept up, so I've only read through issue 2. So, do I definitely want to read issues 3 and 4? Is there a lot of G.I. Joe action?
I mean, in the Transformers books, not so much. In some of the, what I will say, I don't want to give away spoilers, even though Skybound themselves spoiled one of the things. The Cobra Commander book specifically has a good amount of Transformers stuff happening in that. So if you are saying, hey, I just want to read the Transformers stuff, you should pick up Cobra Commander.
Nope.
You know, if
That
you're
was
one of
enough
those
to make me
folks that's
quit. Like, I think I'm done.
I mean,
You think you're done with the comic?
Yeah, if they're going to put a major character like that in a G.I. Joe book, I'm done. Like, there's no reason to continue for me.
And that's what I was about to say, is that there are going to be people who want to be just Transformers purists for the bind, and they will be displeased with that. And not what I will say is, so far, that doesn't take away anything from the Transformers book. The Transformers book is telling its own story, and will Transformers and Cobra Commander intersect? Very likely, but some books are good about, hey, another part of the story is some comic universes are good about saying, hey, there's another part of the story that took place over here, and if you read that, you have more fleshed out details, but we're still able to tell a very coherent, self-contained story in our own book.
I think you could summarize that very easily, Phil, just by saying they're separated by time. There's a passage of time before the Joe story starts.
I'm not 100% certain of like where things are taking place time-wise, especially Duke.
Duke says how long it's been. But anyway, we're digressing too deep into it.
More about that later on.
We're getting too deep into it. If you are interested in reading these Skybound comics,
this wasn't the topic.
If you're interested in reading the Skybound comics, you should check them out. They're okay. Not the best writing in the world, not the worst writing in the world. Definitely an enjoyable product.
Well, I was kind of like, I mean, I thought that they were fine, but nothing was really hooking me yet. And then Paul seemed all upset. And so this is why I need to read it to figure out why Paul is upset.
I don't know if he is upset. What I will say is, like, Starscream is a villain. Like, this is not a Starscream who can be like, oh, he can be redeemed. It's like, no, he is a hardcore villain. Like, he is a villain amongst his peers even. So, I'm enjoying it. If you don't want that Starscream, if you want more like emo-y Starscream, he can still be saved, like turn him into Loki sort of thing. This ain't the comic for you then.
Yeah, the old comic might be better, or even Earthspark.
Yeah.
Earthspark is a perfectly relatable Starscream.
I'm just like the thing for me, and I've said this since like issue 1, is we're getting different flavors of Transformers in these different mediums.
Right, we are getting different flavors of Transformers. I think like what can be really hard for people sometimes, and I really think that if you adopt my strategy, you'll feel much better. And that is, it can be hard sometimes to see characterizations of some of your old favorite characters that are completely different than what you want them to be or what you're used to them being, especially when they're drawn to look just like the G1 characters. And I just label everything past G1 that uses the same characters and the same likenesses as fan fiction. It's just a different interpretation. Therefore, and I've always read fan fiction. I love fan fiction. It's a lot of fun. So it's fine. Good. Great. This new Skybound fan fiction, I'm enjoying it. Good times.
I was going to kind of scoff at that idea because it's more than just fan fiction, but I did say something similar to Paul the other day, which is like, these are all sort of just what if stories. You know, what if, Transformers intersected with G.I. Joe in this way or that way? But I mean, even back in the day when the original G1 stories were coming out, the comic book was telling different stories than what the cartoon was. That doesn't make them fan fiction. The UK comics were telling different stories than the American ones were. So, like, none of that is necessarily fan fiction. It's just different iterations. I think one of the things that we've talked about before that separates Transformers so much from, say, Star Wars or Spider-Man is Transformers is product first, fiction second. Whereas, the comic book universe, Batman, Spider-Man, even then into the more movie properties like Star Wars, those are fiction first. And you have one coherent sort of line of fiction that the characters are trying to keep. That doesn't mean you don't have versions of Peter Parker that are complete immoral a-holes. They exist, but they're just in sort of alternate universe what if kind of deals. And in the Transformers world, because they reset the fiction every couple of years to a slight degree, we get sort of different iterations of these characters.
That was absolutely true. And how you deal with that is up to you, right?
Yeah.
Because we do use the same names and the same likenesses so many times that it gets annoying sometimes. It can be tricky.
But I think that ties in well to our bigger topic, which is like, what have been our favorite eras of Transformers? What have been our favorite iterations of Transformers?
So
I think
bringing it home. That was cool.
Oh, thank you.
So the topic tonight, we're specifically discussing the quality of the toys themselves. So not necessarily the fiction or and whatnot, but of the actual toys and through the years. And the reason why I was kind of thinking about this is that one of the friends of the show had posted on Facebook a video, but she had mentioned that she thought that there has been a drop in quality lately with Transformers, and I don't know what line that she was referring to. If she was referring to the legacy offshoots, or if she was referring to the Earthspark toys that go with that show, or what. But I was like, you know what, this sounds like it would be kind of an interesting topic to discuss. And then also I think it kind of is dependent too on what you value in your Transformers toys as well, because I think different eras were different with all that. So
I feel like ever since I got off the deep end into this hobby and got really into it, there's always someone crying the quality is going down. Everything has gotten worse from here. Like, there's always someone saying that. And I'm going to say a really good starting point for that. I'm sure people were saying it before. I'm sure people were saying it back when G2 came out. They were saying these new G2 figures probably aren't nearly as good as G1, me. And then when Beast Machines came out, they were like, oh, this isn't nearly as good as Beast Wars, me. But one that really kind of showed a tipping point was alternators, right? Alternators were really high quality figures. And they hit our shelves for very reasonable prices. And what was the next Transformers toy line after alternators came out, Christian, who pays better attention to dates than me? That would have been what, 2000?
I mean, it was running concurrently with Energon and Cybertron.
Yeah,
and
right. Okay.
Universe and Movie and Classics. So it didn't have a successor, but it was running throughout all of those. So it would be, I guess, Movie, because that would have licensed alt modes.
So when people were holding their movie figures, they might hold them up to an alternator and be like, oh, this is so much worse. And they may have even held up like a Cybertron figure and been like, oh, this has gone downhill. Yesterday I had this cool alternator smoke screen, and today I have this Cybertron brick. Ugh, gross. Meh. Even though Cybertron toys were totally fine.
They were. Well, as the G1 is G1er, I think anything made after 1985 is utter garbage.
Well, even
that
G1,
you, because you were made after 1985.
Oh, Christian,
ooh.
Called yourself garbage. I'm gonna cry for you later.
I don't actually mean that. I truly don't.
We know you don't.
But I was gonna say, even G1, like later iterations, and this is really where we need Peter. But of course, we'll make our do with Christian. But like later versions of G1 figures, like a lot of those, there's always these different iterations where they may have removed, like certain, like the rubber tires, removed die cast from the figures, replaced it with plastic on some of the parts, right? Because I'm trying to think, like I know Ultra Magnus was one of those ones.
All the commemorative stuff was changed somewhat. Missiles were lengthened for safety, springs were removed for safety, right. Rubber tires were replaced with plastic.
Yeah, just earlier today, we were talking about the premiumness of HasLabs, and I was mentioning how I think of Death Source as premium, and one of our friends of the show mentioned very quickly, oh, well, I don't think that Death Source is premium because here I am with my third-party figures, and they have die cast. And that's what makes them premium, is that they have die cast. And it's just like, wow, we have some really different lines for what makes something premium. Because I'm kind of with Christian on the idea that if a figure is well weighted and uses just plastic and doesn't need the metal to hold the feet down, it's actually better. I don't really like die cast in my figures because they weight down certain parts. And lead to joints loosening. And that bothers me as someone who likes to pose their figures. You know, I like to pose them on one foot and whatnot. If the other foot has die cast in it, the leg's going to wear down on me. So I don't love it that much. It's just interesting to think like we have different markers of quality. You know, Rob will call something not really an MP figure if it doesn't have a certain amount of paint on it, right? Like that's a level of quality that is just, it's interesting. So it's like, I still think something could be really high quality even if it doesn't have a lot of paint. So it's just a fun topic to kind of toss around, like what we all think of as quality. Leave it to the psychologist to talk about it like that.
Lucas, I think kind of to your point, you know, if you go back to G1 and you look at a toy like Slapdash, who is, you know, sort of a later G1 car, yes, is he bigger than Jazz and Prowl were? Certainly, but he doesn't have as high quality of a look to him. Now he has more of a gimmick going on with him. But this is, a lot of people would be able to argue, and I think rightly so, like a lower quality toy than the original car robots that we did get. Now, this was not designed by those same designers, and he is bigger. But there are trade-offs that you get from a less detailed figure here than what we got with the original G1, you know, 84 lineup kind of guys. And this is in that sort of, you know, beloved G1 era. So yeah, there's a, you know, quality differentiation even way back in the day in the 80s.
Well, and I think it really is, you know, apparent somewhat, like just differences in, like, I guess what the designers focus on with some of the Armada toys now versus, like, you know, what came out originally, right? So the new Armada figures that we get are in scale, you know, and they have a nice deco. They have loads more articulation than they used to, right? But they have like half the amount of plastic that they did, you know, when they came out however many umpteen years ago. They don't have all of the play features necessarily, or firing missiles and things like that that they did back then. But it's like, it's kind of like, well, what do you, you know, what do you prefer? Like, if you would rather have your figures be highly articulated, like maybe you like the new, you know, whatever, like Armada Optimus Prime, or, well, I guess that may not be a great one to say, like the Cybertron one. Christian, what was the one that came out? The one that was built on the Ultra Magnus mold.
The Galaxy Prime.
Galaxy upgrade Optimus Prime.
Yeah. So like that one's like half the size of the old one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, it was one of those where like the actual Transformers play action figure quality almost feels a little bit less. And if you literally compare the two side by side, you know, you definitely see some modern things from the newer figure, but it just feels like a less exciting toy. It's just kind of like all those different versions of Laser Prime we've gotten over the years just don't have the like jump in articulation and coolness that the original Laser Prime had, right? Like that thing was so much more articulated and playable and just fun as heck. And then we got all these new versions, like the one with the peeling stickers from a few years back. And they just didn't quite do it the same. Even though they were kind of better toys in a way, they were more modern. They just didn't have that same appeal. And I think the Armada stuff has really kind of stood out to me because at the time, I thought of Armada as bad. It was big, it was chunky, it wasn't articulated. I had car robots, I had Beast Wars, and Armada was just like, why are these things so chunky? And then I got my mini-cons and I used the mini-con play features and I was like, this is fine, but it's going to break if I keep playing with it. So I didn't even play with those that much. Now as a collector who's tried every type of Transformers over the years, I really do see the value of those Armada toys, right? They were simple to transform, so kids could actually enjoy them with their not as good articulated hands and whatnot. And then the mini-con features were cool. They were the soul of the series, right? They made mini-cons as important in the toys as they were in the cartoon. And when you completely take them out, meaning that they're not even coming with most of our Armada figures that we're getting now. It's kind of like I almost hold that Armada Starscream figure and I'm like, this toy is really good. I'm like, but it has no soul. No toys actually have souls, right? But it doesn't, right? He doesn't have his cool little mini con buddy to activate his play features. I just flip his cannons around and they go to town, whatever. And it's just not the same as, the old toys were. The old toys kind of had that, like, I don't know. They just had something that I didn't appreciate at the time. They had an aspect of quality.
I mean, plastics change, how much toys cost to make change. So Armada, yes, we're big and chunky, but that I don't necessarily think that made them better. I mean, there's so many Armada toys specifically, and even then going into, any of the Unicron trilogy toys for that matter, where there was such a focus on the play feature that the toy itself just looked bad, wasn't a great representation of the character. Some of them pulled it off remarkably well. I mean, I love Energon Starscream. I think that is a great toy, has a cool play feature, looks great in, both his modes, looks great with his little like Energon attack mode or whatever they called it for the Decepticons. Some of the Terracons that came out with Energon, I think are absolutely fantastic and still hold up very well today in terms of looking good and moving nicely. But if you look at a guy like, I won't even go down the path of Armada Sideswipe, but Armada Blur is could be a much cooler looking toy. I mean, I think the design certainly didn't look like Blur, but I mean, it's kind of a cool sports car and kind of a cool, like almost Snake Eyes-esque character with his look on the show. And you just didn't get that from the toy. And even his mini con, when he interacts with it, is like, to me, there's something about, aside from Headmasters, there's something I dislike about like the Power Masters and mini con figures where you needed to have that extra figure to activate a play feature. Because guess what? Sometimes little mini figures get lost. And the Headmasters I give an exception for because that's that separate gimmick. But I don't know. I disagree with you, Anna. I very much enjoy the legacy Starscream that we got recently, Armada Starscream versus the original Armada.
I like it. It just doesn't have that same kind of feel that the original had.
Well, one thing I'd like to bring up is the fact that, like, up until about 2015 or so, like, all of the mainline Transformers that were coming out were primarily made for kids. Like, that was the primary market. The collectors were pretty much an afterthought at that point. Like, maybe it's great, like, but Hasbro essentially figured, like, it's a small chunk of the market. Whereas I think now, like, there was a, kind of a bifurcation, a split around that time where they said, you know what, like, the mainline, whatever, like, cartoon or whatever we're going to have, like, those are going to be for kids, and then we're going to actually create a separate collector's line. And so that's the thing where, that those previous lines made for kids, like, you had to have play features in there. You had to have, like, it has to be somewhat easy to transform. Like, I don't necessarily know that kids, I'm sure that they think that paint is cool and that articulation is cool, but, like, all things being equal, like, is it a fun toy is the number one thing. And so that's where I kind of feel like that there's really been a split. And the thing that's somewhat disappointing with that is I do think the quality of the kids lines has dropped significantly. Like, I think that all of the, Cybertron and Bumblebee, whatever, and all the crap, like, in the last however many years has just not been great. I don't know, like, how much of it, hurts the enjoyment of it for little kids, but, like, it's somewhat disappointing, I feel like, for me, and then, having to deal, like, when my kid breaks a figure or whatever, too.
I remember a few years back after Crash Combiners came out, I went to a friend's house and I saw his son playing with his Crash Combiners. And I saw how happy that simple play feature made that kid. He just loved just going and smashing them together and making them combine. Like that was just such a fun thing for him. And that really made me rethink. You know, I had looked at that kid's line and gone, well, that's kind of a dumb play pattern. And when I actually saw my kid enjoyed it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not a child anymore. I'm missing it. I miss what could be fun about that.
Yeah, I think there's, the separation of the collector line versus the kid friendly line is important, because it is two different demographics you're trying to please with that. And I agree. I think with both your points, Anna and Lucas, that the kid friendly line, yeah, maybe it was Cyber or RID that it peaked, maybe Cyberverse a little bit. There's some toys I like from Cyberverse that were more kid centric, that are even, as an adult collector appreciated then. Repugnus from Cyberverse I thought was fun. But my son has got a couple of the Crash Combiners, and those are, a great little thing. Now, those are not characters those were new characters to that RID. It was Saberhorn and Bisque. So it was like, okay, my brain sort of gave those an exception for being like, play feature centric. But now fast forward to today, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. My son got the Optimus Primal Skull Cruncher Weaponizer whatever pack, and like that's just bad. Like, you had toys that did that same kind of play feature with the Cyberverse line, and they worked so much better. They were just better quality toys. I think the price was a little bit higher, maybe $5 or so more, and I get inflation has made, outweighed some of these things. But yeah, that Skull Cruncher just doesn't stay in his armor mode, and my 3-year-old getting pissed off like every time he breathes on it slightly, it just flips back up in his gator mode, and it's annoying. And I think that's one of the things with play features, is that if they don't work right, they do become more annoying than a positive benefit.
Phil, did you get any of the original Rescue Bots toys for your kids?
Yes.
And so that's the thing where I feel like you can tell there is a noticeable difference in quality in those toys compared to what we have now for those. And so like I definitely see that, and like I wish that I could have that option like for my kids, that there was something along those lines. When they were that age of, say not necessarily a toddler, but kind of, like 6 to 10 or whatever. Type of thing, because like I like those original Rescue Bot toys were just absolutely fantastic. They're built like tanks. Like there's just no way it's almost impossible to break those. But then like the new stuff, like I remember there was some new toys. I can't remember. There's a couple different ones of I think there was like a dinosaur Rescue Bot or something like that, where like literally playing with it would break it. And it's just frustrating that they didn't put that same level of quality for that. So I think that the collector's lines, like I don't think have been quite as hurt as much, but of course the prices have went up significantly, so I suppose that it's like I guess that's what they can make for the price point, I suppose, and make their margins. But
yeah, so I've got, I think they're called the one-step changers. I apologize if I'm wrong on that, but I've got one-step changers of the original Rescue Bots, like Heatwave and Blades and Boulder and Chase, and the plastic quality on those is better than the new one-step changers that are coming out. So like my son has the Megatron one-step changer where he turns into that drill tank. I've had to fix it a couple times. It's not as good quality. But it's not far off. It's not nearly as far off as like that Skull Cruncher and Optimus Primal compared to the same kind of toys we got during the Cyberverse line.
But even then, like Age of Extinction had a ton of one-step changers, and they were crap. Like I swear that we probably lost like half a dozen wheels off the toys or whatever on the various one-step changers, and a couple of them broke and stuff. So it's not like this is a new thing that it's like, oh man, the quality of the one-step changers in 2023 like sucks or whatever. But then in, you know, whatever 2005 it was, or whatever, what year was that? 2015 or whatever, was perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant battle of trying to get something at a price point that you know the kids are going to want to scoop up, and not making it so expensive that you know, parents are going to look past it, and then something that Hasbro can make a profit on.
You know what we have now for one-step changers? We have freaking finger puppet duders. You know those finger puppets from Earthspark? You just like, you stick your finger in the car's butt and it turns into a robot. And by turns into a robot, I mean the car splits in half and reveals a vague plastic depiction of a robot.
What's weird is, like, I went to a physical at my doctor's office, and he did that to me, and it turned into a robot. I didn't know I was a robot. I guess I'm a pretender. And as soon as the doctor like did that little checkup there, and it was like, I'm a robot.
I mean, that's just, those toys are just previewing the futures. No, they're funny though. They're genuinely a funny line, because I don't really know like if they were supposed to be serious or not, because they are just like weird finger puppet Transformers. They're very strange. They're very funny. I got one as a joke gift for Christmas and I adore it. Of course it's RC, but it is fantastic. You just, and then Transformers.
I mean, you always are gonna have these toy companies trying to make a toy for $5 or less, and that becomes harder in this day and age. So you know, what used to be a $5 under toy was much better quality than what we have now. You know, for obvious reasons, but it does get to the point where it just starts to become laughable how ridiculous some of these like $5 and under toys are. Like, you know, my son got a Paw Patrol movie, like a little blind bag thing. I think it was like $3.99, and we opened it up, and it was like a little tiny Paw Patrol figurine, and it's like, this was $3.99. This thing is like, doesn't move at all. Like, the paint is okay, but it's like maybe an inch tall.
You put a quarter in the machine at the grocery store to get those, right?
Yeah, back in the day, exactly. You would get that same kind of thing from a gumball machine in the 80s and 90s. So, you know, yeah, it's just, it's not easy, and people. And the thing is that a lot of people still look at toys as things that are supposed to be cheap. Like, there are things that sort of some people feel like should escape inflation, and I think toys are one of those items.
They're definitely going to get hit by inflation, perhaps even harder. Now, I think there's a couple of quality points like I kind of want to touch on, and I just can't help it because we're picking on the kid lines, we're picking on the simplified lines. I can't help but want to mention those Cyberverse figures that half transformed. You remember those? I had the Slipstream, right? Because I was like, I want a Slipstream toy, and Slipstream's a major character now, and wow, she half transforms into a jet and can't transform into the full thing to do a play feature. And those just felt almost insulting, because the half the transformation that did happen wasn't half bad, but then the other half of it just straight up didn't happen. And it was like, why would I give this to a kid and be like, here's your half transformer? That just feels mean, because the overall plastic quality, the transformation quality, the articulation of the parts that did move, none of that was bad. It just stopped halfway. It's such a weird choice.
I mean, is that with the first Transformers movie where we had that divergence among the lines? Because wasn't it just one line of toys up until that point where...
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. And
other than Rescue Bots and stuff, yeah.
Well, Rescue Bots was post that, so...
Was it?
Like,
I thought Rescue Bots was 100 years ago. I was.
Yeah, like, I mean, Christian, you got better knowledge than me around, like, Beast Wars and Unicron Trilogy, but there was nothing during those. Like, everything was mainline. During those, you know, so
the first like concurrent lines you would have would be like Robots in Disguise leading into Universe, Armada universe existing at the same time. Armada, Energon universe, alternators, a commemorative series that was pretty big. And then when the movie launched, you had movie, classics, and then in short order, animated.
But also amongst the movie toys were toys that were not made for.
Sorry, you wanted that. Yes,
Yeah.
There was movie, there was robot replicas, and there was fast action battlers, which is probably the one you're talking about. And then there's various other things like the bumper battlers or the whatever Legends thing that was a different line at the time.
The die-cast cars that you flip over and they have a picture of the robot on them.
It's called RPMs. Those didn't show up until later, but yeah.
Those make me smile because they're weird.
Yeah. But yeah, fast action battlers were directed directly at children, whereas you just had movie, which was also for kids, but looked mostly like the characters. Fast action battlers focused on a play feature. The main line focused on transforming as a gimmick, plus automorph.
Yeah, you had some automorph. Blackout had some features in them. There was definitely features in them, but it wasn't as prominent.
Right, transforming is the gimmick.
Yeah.
The other side of our discussion is toys that are kind of held back by some aspect of quality, or perhaps even entire lines that are held back by some aspect of quality. And I think, the thing that comes to mind the fastest is these are deluxes from Cyberverse and Earthspark, right? These are almost good toys, right? Like they are just so close to being mainline level nice toys. That's what they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be the kids show delving into mainline style products, calling them deluxe figures, not because of size, but because they're fancier. And then there's just aspects of them that are just not quite there. And it almost feels like they're artificially worse than they could be in a way.
The plastic is worse. The paint is absolutely worse. The articulation is usually worse, although I will make an exception for that Bumblebee because he was very good. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, not good. And just think about how quickly that RC yellowed. I mean, that was some in package that were yellowing. That was very bad.
I know.
We've had a
Ron
couple of
brought
that since the change over to Vietnam and the different kind of plastics. But this was before that, or in the midst of that, or before Collector Line had gone over, something like that. The timing is very close, but RC was like a portent of things to come.
Yeah, they need to go back to the old plastic mines they used to be using.
I think they're probably okay now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I know Ron had brought that up just in general with like all the lines. That there was definitely an issue with yellowing.
I don't think that's a quality issue. I wouldn't describe that as a quality issue. I would describe that as a materials issue. I
mean, I kind of feel like it is a quality issue, though, right? Like, or quality control. Not necessarily quality, but the thing that was weird about a lot of those yellowing figures is it seemed like it was hit and miss too, right? Because there's I almost feel like it was certain batches of, because I remember, I think one of the Junkians I got, like, I think a Rekgar or something, had a couple pieces here or there. And there was other ones around that time frame where it seemed like that certain people's had yellowed, or like their gray plastic was like a weird, color or whatever. But then other people's weren't quite as bad.
I'm just going to be mean and bring up Jetfire. I know that the Jetfire affected Christian, but, my Jetfire I've had since he came out. I pre-ordered him. This is Commander Jetfire I'm talking about from Siege. I've had him since he came out. I pre-ordered him. He's been on my shelf, not particularly protected, prominently on display for the entire time, sometimes being taken down to transform and play with. Hasn't yellowed one bit. Christian, who is equally, if not more, protective of his figures, to me, did not have that luck.
Well, but the room that you have it in, does it have a lot of natural light?
I don't think either of us did at the time. Yeah, Christian prevented the natural light.
Oh,
Mine's in
okay.
my lower level, which is natural light free for gaming.
Yeah.
So it's nice and safe, but we both tried to keep them safe from natural light. Like I never opened any of my blinds in the house because I have too many toys around. I worry about yellowing because my aren't
Right.
robots in disguise. I don't call it that. My car robots toys yellowed. That has like traumatized me forever towards yellowing because JRX is an amazing combiner set, still really cool. And mine just looks like poopy poops. I keep it because it's always been mine, but geez, it
I
just
feel like it's
doesn't
hard to
look nice
find
anymore.
a completely bone white version of that anyway.
It really is. It really is. Unless you just find one that's still in package.
Well, even
Even
then, I'm
then.
sure.
Even then,
Yeah.
they're kind of turning.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I kind of pinpointed was one of my favorite eras of Transformers is, and I'd say for the toys, I'd say maybe the best era in my opinion, and that was the kind of right before, right at the start, the Thrilling 30 era. So like 2013, 2014. I loved so many of the toys that came out then. You had the combination of the Transformers Prime toys coming out. You had the Generations toys were really fun new molds. Like Springer is still one of my favorite from Generations Thrilling 30. We had our first Titan with Metroplex, just this behemoth of an action figure, and toy and play set. You were getting the video game toys from the War for Cybertron line mixed in there, and then you had the start of Rescue Bots. You had, if you go into 2014, you have Age of Extinction movie figures in there. So there's a lot to choose from, and the quality I would say was still really fun and good. And then we started getting into the Combiner Wars trilogy, and things kind of it changed. Again, we kind of got back to a little bit of a gimmick focus for the collector's line, that being the gimmick of the combination and what that did for a lot of the deluxes with repeat of sort of the mold usage. And, it just, that all being said, that era of toys did have some quality control issues with the swirly plastics. And it wasn't the yellowing thing, but in some people's eyes, maybe it's worse because it's that toy in the package before any sunlight has touched it. Before it's like set out on a shelf to be sold at the local store, the swirling plastic is in there. And so Hasbro nailed that down to a big extent. You don't see that as much anymore. But even then, in an era that I view as one of the top eras for Transformer toys, we still had some plastic Q and paint QC issues even back then.
Well, and I think that to me, I feel like there was more QC issues around that time. Like, Skull Cruncher is like a good example where a lot of those like had really floppy legs. And I think there's probably plenty of other examples too on some of the ball
I think a
joints.
lot of Titans Return was like that. And I think
Yep.
after that, you see a shift from ball joints to universals.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would like to point towards 2009 and 2010 as being a pinnacle of quality, because at that time you had Revenge of the Fallen running, which is probably the best movie line. A lot of those molds were really great. They were well painted. Some of the features had to get cut, like Sideways' Saw thing got cut, and there was something that got cut out of Prime based on the oil crisis that happened in 2008, the housing crisis that happened in 2008. Everything happened in 2008. But Revenge of the Fallen still a great line. You had animated still running with great toys that looked like the characters, great paint, great construction. And then you had Universe running, which is probably the least of the three. But even then, you have cool characters like the Sunstreaker, the Sideswipe mold coming out, excellent. Galvatron mold, very bad. So like, you have stinkers anywhere you go. But I think 2009 is another peak for me.
Yeah, I do always think it's funny when people would like point to say, "Oh, the classics or this line was great and that line, right?" But like, I feel like a lot of times when you go look back at some of those older lines, you want to gravitate to the handful of figures that were really great. Like you're gonna like pick out the top ones, right? And then when you compare it to the newer ones, like you'll point out the worst ones in the new line. And so yeah, but I was gonna say I feel like my pick, because animated was started in 2007,
8.
2008. Okay, but I feel like right around that first movie, was really great because you had the animated toys were all fantastic. You had your movie toys that were really good too. The alternators was pretty much sunsetting at that point. I guess it was
on its way out.
It was kind of on its way out, but I'm this way I can just put it in there together with it, Christian. So I feel like it counts.
You had 2 more figures that came out in 08. You're fine.
And then,
but it was also a time where you could find alternators for cheap.
True. But then you also had, I think, Cybertron was still at that time, right?
Not really. Cybertron gave way to classics briefly and then movie.
No, I swear Cybertron.
Like Phil said, that there weren't concurrent lines up until the movie. And even really classics ended, but had like 2 or 3 more exclusives come out at the same time. So really it's movie and animated are the first ones, and then Universe comes back in.
Yeah.
Beginning in 2009.
But I mean, I guess I just really remember it because like I got a bunch of classics figures, or I got all the classics figures at the time, and then I was like, oh, what else can I buy? And they had Cyberverse, or whatever. Was it Cyberverse? What's the? I'm trying to remember the line. Sorry, the Unicron trilogy was the last one. Cybertron. Was that about the same time? I know they were on the shelves at least.
Yeah, Cybertron was 2005 to 2006. Classics was 2006.
Right. So, but anyway, so
you had tail end stuff in on shelves at the same time that movie was coming out.
Right.
So they were crossing over. They weren't like running at the same time.
Right, but I mean, there was a hell of a lot of Transformers on the shelves in 2007 though.
Until Christmas of 2007, when anything Transformers was just gone. Old Cybertron stock, out of there. Movie stuff, good luck.
Although I do remember, when did the 20th anniversary MP1 come out?
2004. Or 2004, I'm sorry, yeah.
I swear I remember around that time in 2006 that Walmart had like an entire aisle of them on clearance for like $30.
It came out again in 2006 for the 20th anniversary of Transformers the movie.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I remember that because like I picked one up and I was like, oh, this is fantastic for like whatever price I paid for it. It was not very much.
That was the talking stand, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the talking stand with the 06 version. Fun fact, this is the 20th anniversary of 20th anniversary Optimus Prime.
Oh, no.
It's true, though. It's true.
Check out Aaron Archer's show on that. He did one at the end of last year. Is really enlightening on how that came together, that particular figure.
I need to go and watch that because that toy, it doesn't sit on a shelf for me anymore, partially because I'm so like heavy that I worry it's going to topple over and kill something. But that was like fairly early on in my wife and I's relationship of dating, and she got me that for our first Valentine's Day. I was like, holy crap, this is an awesome toy. And like back then, like what it originally cost, she was still in college, and to get something that nice and not only something like that nice and that fancy, but something that was like, yeah, this is not a gift that she's getting like for me, but also kind of for her. Like, no, this is purely for this nerd dude that she's dating now that she likes. And so yeah, I was already very smitten with her by that point, but that really solidified.
You made the right decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I mean, I would even say that was a level of great quality, just different objectives, like Lucas mentioned. And you had that, you had alternators, you had the tail end of Armada and the beginnings of Energon. None of those figures were crappy figures, like Phil, you said that some of them were hampered by gimmicks and didn't look very good, but they weren't like constructed poorly. Like you can't just and then they're destroyed. They are, I mean, tough toys.
They are, and again, to Anna's point earlier, they were made for more kid focus at that point in time. I mean, they're nigh indestructible. I'll definitely say that, but they left me so wanting. I mean, the Energon line is my favorite of the Unicron trilogy, and I felt that line we got a lot of toys that were a good mixture of looking good as robots, looking good as a vehicle, and incorporated a play feature. Not to say that you didn't have that with some Armada toys, but to me, that's, you know, the Unicrons and the tidal waves and the wheeljacks of Armada. Those are the exceptions versus your scavengers and your overloads and even your Optimus Prime and Megatrons. I thought were lame toys.
Oh, this is still one of my favorite figures.
Yeah, that is. That thing is amazing. I've got the original version of Landmine, and it's such a great design. It's such a cool way that yeah.
But like, what would you do to improve it? What would you do to make this come out now and be better? You'd add articulation, and I think it's got plenty of paint.
Yeah, you don't need to add.
The whole thing is painted.
Well,
it's got the play feature of combining.
Now, hold on a second. I'm not as 100% familiar, but is that a Transformers Collectors Club exclusive version you're holding there?
No, this came out at retail. You could just buy this on a shelf.
Okay. I knew he had, you know, obviously Landmine was the orange one, was the first one, and then I knew he had a repaint. The white one. What's that?
Landquake.
Landquake. Okay, so that's Landquake, and then I knew he was used in Transformers Collectors Club.
That's Land Shark.
Yeah. So
he was a BotCon 09 exclusive.
Yeah. So that being said, I think that toy is just darn near perfect. God, that was a big hefty purchase for me. I remember when I bought that toy. That was a hard purchase for me to make. You know, I think I bought it after like going to a job fair that I just struck out at consistently. So I was like, hey, I didn't get a job. Let me go spend money. That makes sense. You know, but it was yeah, I don't think I'll ever sell that toy because it's so flippin' amazing. Could you improve it by slimming it down, making it not as back heavy? You know, I think if you took out the speaker feature in there, that would help it a bit. So there's a few things I think spending time on it you could do to improve it, but there are definitely toys in almost every line that are like high points. And again, we're getting a new tidal wave. And how different is the Titan tidal wave from the original one aside from size?
Oh, very. Articulation.
Yeah.
Its legs move.
No, I mean, not even. I mean, the original title was pretty well articulated.
His legs are not very good at doing much.
Yeah.
His arms are decent, but anyway.
Yeah.
My point is that, you know, these characters, these figures from back then were not crappy. I think they were limited by objectives and they were limited by technology. But you can see in stuff like Tidal Wave and Armada Optimus Prime, even Starscream, like you mentioned, Anna, that they look the same. You think that Starscream is lacking soul, and I think that's a face thing, a sculpt thing. But like they're bringing those same designs forward and enhancing them with modern technology, and they're still good. Like I wouldn't call either one of them crappy. I say they were both quality.
Oh, they're definitely not crappy. They're just like, they just don't have that level of experience in the same ways, you know?
Sure.
I think more so than thinking the new figures are bad, it just reminded me that the old figures had value, and that value that I can enjoy as much nowadays, because most of what my collection does is sit on shelves and look pretty. And those aren't going to look as pretty as the new ones. They're going to be at their best when you take them down and play with the mini-con play features, which I would do, but not that often. So I will get more value out of the new ones.
So that actually really brought something home for me, because what does my collection do? It's the same as yours. But I feel like there's still value in displaying this in situ with other Energon figures. Whereas, the Titans Return, Power of the Primes, Universe 2 stuff, where we've gotten better versions of, I guess, in my opinion, better versions of the same characters, those are the ones that I want to sell. I mean, I brought my Titans bin home from storage last weekend so that I could go through it and see if I can get rid of anybody. Because everyone's been done better. Like, I don't have very many Universe 2 toys anymore because the Combiner Wars era did better, and now the War for Cybertron and Forward era is doing better. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when they do the same characters over and over again, I'm willing to get rid of older versions. But when it comes to, Armada, Energon, Cybertron, the original versions, they're not doing these better. Or if they are, they're doing them with different objectives.
Mm-hmm.
There's
I agree
nothing
with that.
quite like this. Even
And
if they redo it.
I think too, if we look at Armada, so Starscream was a great character to look at through the Unicron trilogy. I think all three of his Unicron trilogy toys are pretty darn fun. Armada, in my opinion, is the weakest. But Cybertron,
it's built as partly a playset.
Yeah,
it really is.
That's what it's doing. That's its goal.
But Cybertron, Starscream, and Energon Starscream are freaking fantastic toys. And could you update those? You can again, but I think those are toys that are different takes of a character that still look good on a shelf. Christian, to your point, is once we started getting into the Combiner Wars trilogy and past that, is that we weren't getting new takes of a character. We were getting something that was supposed to really homage, if not be exactly G1.
Yes.
And now we're getting newer, better versions. So Titans Return Scourge, that's a great toy. That was a great Scourge when that came out. Then we got Studio Series Scourge, and it's like, all right, bye-bye. Titans Return Scourge, I don't need you anymore.
Yep.
Even the Takara one with the better paints, it's still not as good as Studio Series.
I would argue that like as far as the collector line goes, like if you're just looking at that, I would actually say that Combiner Wars trilogy, like between Power of the Primes and Titan Returns and all that Combiner Wars, like I would say that's probably the low point for quality, to be honest. I think that I had to spend a significant amount on upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
I had to spend a significant amount on stickers. Like, I never bought, like, that was really the only era that I actually bought a ton of Toy Hacks stickers. Because, like, I had to.
No paint.
Like, there was no paint on them and no deco. And then they, like, tried to rectify that by giving us, like, just absolute garbage stickers.
That was Titans,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, with Titans or whatever. Those were absolutely horrible. So I feel like that all of those figures, that if they release something new, it's like they're all going to get replaced. And I think the other thing too is like also with those lines, if you stuck to the ones that they were specifically doing the gimmick, so it's like if you actually wanted to buy the headmasters in Titans Return, then I think it actually worked out okay. But any of the other ones that they did repaints, remolds of, the same thing with Combiner Wars. Like if you actually did the combiners, like, obviously the Minosaur was not good and they replaced that. But the other ones, like, they're okay. But yeah, like if you got all the repaints with Optimus and it's like is there anyone in the world that is using that Optimus Prime, the Combiner Wars Optimus Prime, and some of those other ones is like their main version of that character?
Or Power of the Prime Starscream. Yeah.
God, that thing is such a... I hated that so much. Like, that is probably one of my least favorite figures.
Yeah.
But I think this conversation's really underlined something that I think's really, really kind of a privilege we have these days, is we get to be this picky about figures.
That's true.
Just like pick out those ones that we don't think are as high quality as others.
This was the line once. This was it.
Yeah, right.
Like Phil said, it was just Transformers up until 2007. Like you want a Transformer? This is all there is. Boom, Transformers.
Imagine that if these were all there was, right? I think we would all end up enjoying them. Even though they're not as good as the other toys we have, I really think they're okay. Like they're decent enough Transformers. The plastic is worse than mainline, but it's actually not bad plastic. Might have never broken. They don't have problems. They're okay. Yes, there are blatant things about them that can kind of piss you off. Like, why is this in no way transforming? Why does he just have a chunk hanging off his arm at this level of toy? Why wasn't he as well painted? You know what I did though? I added a little paint to him and he looks a lot better. So it's great. I found a way to enjoy it. I do think if this was the only thing coming out, most of us would still buy it because it would be fine. Even though it's kind of the low point of recent toys.
I mean, I will say that like, you know, once you have 5 different hot rods to compare, you know,
Right.
you're gonna sit there and nitpick it or whatever. Whereas if you only had one, it's like, well, that's what we got. So Anna, I know, like, you know, earlier you kind of mentioned where you've really gravitated to third party as well, right? And you know, why have you decided to kind of try to do that comparative to just collecting Hasbro mainline? Like, do you feel like third party is a significant step up in quality that you're willing to pay for?
I think so in some ways. I think a lot of it is just that by collecting the Hasbro stuff, I've been getting too much stuff. And some of the magic of them has kind of faded away. And I think that's kind of like it's a point where Christian and I almost like metaphorically butt heads, because Christian has said things like, if the design team and the series starts over at this point, I don't know if I really want to keep collecting because I don't want to start over. Right? Because you like the fact that it's been the same design philosophy, that it all goes together for years now. And that's been really nice. I think I'm kind of bored of buying toys from the same set of designers. I think by reintegrating more third party, picking up more of the like Legends brands and designers that I've never held a toy from before, or I haven't in a few years, I'm having more fun now because I'm seeing more different design philosophies. I think that's how I have to collect. Like, I think I have to have some Hasbro stuff and then some third party and try different third party figures. You know, I guess I have a couple. I have owned a couple X Transbots toys, and I currently have one, I believe. But you know, I got the X Transbots mini Streetwise figure, right? And this is just a different way of making a Legends figure that I had never messed with before. They made the plastic more pliable. You have to apply it a little bit to transform it, much like bigger X Transbots figures, but it works because the plastic has a little bit of bend to it. It's in the design and it's fine. I don't like it as much as a lot of other Legends toys, but yeah, the variety is actually entertaining me more. But I think it's interesting though, because I think a lot of people will have been excited about this Legends scale Defensor that's coming out. I think a lot of people are going to handle this plastic and not like it, because the plastic is a little bit more of that thinner, more pliable plastic, kind of similar to early Magic Square stuff, but a little thinner and more pliable. And I think people are going to feel like that's low quality. I don't think it's low quality. I think it's by design so that you can move the parts a little more.
I mean, I think it's interesting, like how far third party has come. I
Oh,
mean, when you look at
absolutely.
the original, like some of the third party that was coming out years and years ago, you know, compared to what you get now, and so like that's the thing. I feel, you know, it's funny, like all this fans project stuff that came out, you know, years and years ago, right? And like we were paying, or like TFC stuff, and it, you know, we were paying $100 a figure for those figures. And I would honestly argue that the newer Hasbro versions of those at, you know, whatever, $20 to $50 a pop or whatever, are higher quality than those ones. But of course, those also came out, you know, 10 years ago. So it was different. But that's one thing I've actually enjoyed about the new design team at Hasbro, because I kind of feel like they've taken a lot of those older third party and masterpiece designs and tried to boil them down a little bit and like make them for a mainstream audience at a certain price point. And so you can see elements of the older masterpiece figures that came out in the newer Transformers. Like they use some of the same tricks and such, and they may simplify it a little bit or whatever. So like I think that's actually kind of neat that that they do that and kind of see like some of the tricks that they use on a $25 deluxe or whatever, and instead of paying $100 for a figure.
I think one big risk you run collecting third party is I don't think third party ages as well, right? Like you can hold up those old animated figures and be like, okay, so they're missing certain types of articulation, or maybe they relied too much on ball joints or whatever, but they still aged well, right? Like they were good at the time. The QC was good. They were made to be good figures. But then you pick up your old iGear figures, right? If anybody has any iGear stuff laying around, ooh, that stuff has not aged well, right? Lots of pushing plastic against each other, lots of things that don't transform very smoothly, nicely, well. And it's a bummer. That's like kind of the thing with third party, because they're always pushing the envelope in uncomfortable ways instead of pushing it in comfortable ways, which you get from a really experienced toy company.
See, I would give third party a little more slack than that, because when third party first started, they were add-on kits, and then they started doing like, if you squint, it looks like Springer kind of thing. It wasn't until relatively recently that they were just like, all right, screw it, we're going straight for like a G1-esque kind of toy, but masterpiece scale. Like I've got a whole slew of third party Decepticon combiners, and Orden, Unique Toys Orden, like that still is a good toy. Like is the plastic quality that great? No, but I think the design to me holds up really nicely, and there's been newer Abominuses that have come out, granted not a lot, but they just don't look as good. Same with Poseidon. I think Poseidon is a fantastic third party set of 6 C-cons there. Yeah, I didn't say C-cons, Christians, I said C-cons. So
Thank you. That's the proper name for them, so good job.
Right, but it's again, like I think third party got to a level where it was not plateauing per se, but the advancements were slightly more minuscule, the very leaps and bounds like it was at the start of third party.
Mm-hmm.
I think your point around the design aspect of it, though, and looking at new designers, to me that is a little bit more of like, how many times can you make a car go into a humanoid form, and when it still feels original? Like now, I just got the new animated Legacy Bumblebee the other day, and this felt really fun and really different to change to. Now, yeah, it's a humanoid that turns into a car, but it's a squatter car. It's a different shaped car. So you have a very, I think, unique transforming pattern with him than what I've seen in Transformers for quite a bit. I think it borrows a little bit from actually Titans Return Bumblebee a bit, but just a smidge.
That's why I picked Shadow Striker as my favorite woman figure from Hasbro for last year, because she transformed different, right? Yeah. She's different. And that just like, I had so much more fun playing with that than I had playing with similar transformations over and over and over. I was like, oh, this is weird. Okay, this is cool. Yeah, her shoulders are too far back, and that does bug me a little bit, but the fact she was different and fun to play with made up for it enough that I enjoyed it.
I mean,
I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I was just going to mention, Phil, you've been frozen for like the last 15 minutes, so just
you're in a good pose though, Phil. You're in a very commanding.
I'm like holding up animated Bumblebee, and it's like no one can see that I'm holding up animated Bumblebee.
No, right. But you're in a commanding pose.
Yeah.
You look like our leader.
Yeah.
One thing I was also going to mention too about third party is I feel like some of those older third party figures that the plastic has gotten a little more brittle, and I felt like even that way with like some of the Mastermind Creations figures, that the reformatted ones, like I don't know, they kind of scared me a little bit more, and I've never really felt that way about a lot of the Hasbro ones, with the exception of like the gold plastic ones, of course, and clear ones. I know that we kind of worry about some of that too, but like I don't know, I feel like I have a fair amount of older, like at least classics era ones that haven't been bad. Like there's been a couple G1 ones where I feel like the plastic's gotten brittle, but of course those are like getting on close to 40 years now. But I don't know. Has that happened to you with some of your older third party figures too? Like the ones that are just like, again, like 8 years old or 6 years old or whatever kind of thing.
Lucas, can I just ask a clarifying question? Are you saying that you didn't think the plastic was that brittle when you originally got it, and
Correct.
now that you're playing with it, you feel it's become more brittle?
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd
Because
say,
the plastic has changed, not your perception of the plastic has changed.
I have some older stuff. I would say that the iGear stuff feels exactly like it did the first time I handled it. Like, I don't really feel like that's aging. I would say I do kind of notice it a bit with some of the older MMC stuff. Like, it doesn't feel as good as it did. Or like when I buy a new MMC toy, it feels better than some of my older stuff on the shelves. One I bought is I was trying to get, all the different RCs at one point years ago, and this made me give up because I got a copy of Delicate Warrior, right? One of the first third-party RCs. And like that thing just felt like it was going to crumble out of the box. I felt like I was dealing with a gold plastic G1 figure. Like I realized that it was not in as good of shape as it was when it first came out. And it probably wasn't the previous owner. It was probably just the fact it wasn't aging well. So I think some of it doesn't age well in a literal sense, that it's not going to last as long. But I think a lot of it does. I think a lot of the plastic is so similar to what Hasbro uses. A lot of the techniques are so similar to what they use that I think it'll be just fine. I think that iGear stuff is going to be just fine. I think the Legend stuff, all of that seems fine. I have some old Iron Factory stuff from the very beginning, and it's fine. I have the first Magic Square and first New Age figures. Those are still fine. I think a lot of it is going to age just fine.
Of like some of those ones, because it's the more pliable plastic, I feel like usually probably holds up a little bit better, or I don't know, for whatever reason I just feel like whatever plastic mix that Mastermind Creations uses, like I've kind of noticed it, because I noticed that too with what was the original line that they did, what's that, the original line that they did, the Hearts of Steel. Like I feel like the because I got several of those figures when I think like BBTS had them on like clearance, like, and this is again years ago, but I feel like when I first got them in, I'm like, man, this feels kind of brittle, and then then I just noticed that with the reformatted, like the longer that I had them, and again, maybe it's just me, and it wasn't something where it's like, oh man, this is a huge problem. Like I just noticed that it seemed like that it was a little bit different. But I haven't noticed that really like in any of the other ones that I had, like from, Fans Toys and, whoever, yada yada, like all those other third party makers.
I just remember
paranoid of handling any of my older third party figures.
That's right. I just remember when Magic Square first got started, right? This was one of their very early figures, was their Grapple and Inferno mold. And I remember people just complaining about this plastic so much. The plastic looked a little different, felt a little different. And I really think that it's like a level of being spoiled, because this is pretty good plastic. Like this is good, strong, good toy plastic. It makes a slightly different look that I think is a little more faded and more like the G1 animation. So I actually prefer it. But then like the early Magic Square figures all got knocked off by MFT, right? And they made it a more generic, just the more generic level of plastic, right? This is like more like what all your Hasbro toys are made from, more the shiny orange. They fixed the head sculpt. That's the one thing they did well. But honestly, I think this is less cool looking. This one looks nicer just because I like the way the plastic looked. And it's just interesting to see, like, this plastic to me makes it look better, but to other people makes it look like junk. That just amuses me to no end that, like, we have such different determinants of quality, such that I would actually think it makes it look better. Their old face sculpts were legitimately bad, though. I can't deny that one. As much as I love Magic Square, they were not doing good on faces for a long time. They do fine now. They do great. Back then, not so much.
Well, and I know, just circling back too about the diecast, you know, like you said, like I know Takara like uses diecast very sparingly, but then like a lot of other third party makers use a ton of it. You know, Fans Toys is one of the ones that did, and I mean, to be honest, like I think it makes the figure look a lot better in some of the cases. Like if they put a really good paint job on it, I think it can make it look really good. No.
I don't think any piece of diecast should ever touch a modern toy.
I should agree. You remember Ace Toys Tumbler, Lucas? The cliff jumper?
Ha! Yes.
That thing was the whole car frame is die-cast. The joints in his arms and legs last for about 2 seconds before they start wearing out of the package. You open a new one and he's just like, oh yeah, he looks okay. And then boom.
That's what your diecast does to you. Your beloved diecast, Lucas.
Weighs you down. That much diecast just killed him.
Oh man, that toy, gosh. Because like, again, like on the face of it, you're like, all right, like, you know, they're doing a premium third-party masterpiece cliff jumper. And then you like get it's all diecast and you get it. And yeah, like it, you know, it was fine. You know,
the intention was good. I'm sure many people ask for literally that. I'm sure there were many people saying like, I want a toy where the whole car body is die cast. And Ace Toys was like, we can do that. Let's do it. And then it was terrible. It was an awful idea.
Because people don't always understand what they're asking for.
They don't.
They're wrong. People are wrong.
People are often wrong. Yes. Yeah. It always makes you laugh.
But I don't know. Like I do think that with a good paint job, Christian, I'm sorry, like it still looks cool. Like it might not hold up well, but it look like out of the box or whatever, you take it out. Like the Fans Toys Galvatron, like when it first came out, it's like that looked really impressive out of the box.
Still does.
I used to say, one of the things I used to say that I wanted in toys, and I really thought I wanted, was toys that were covered head to toe in paint. I thought I really wanted that back in the day. You know, it was like if everything was painted, it would just look so much better. Like when you take a model kit and you just paint it up real nice before you display it. It's going to be like that. And I found out that with Transformers, that's the wrong thing to want. Because once you get too much paint, you can't transform it without scraping anymore. And then you just start killing your own toy by scraping it. And that sucks.
I own the Transformer that has the most paint, I believe. And that was OTFCC Sentinel Maximus. But it can have that much paint because it's a brick. Stuff doesn't scrape together. I mean, that thing is slathered in paint. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to see one in person, Anna, but like, that is what you asked for. And it only pulls it off because it barely moves.
I just remember, or not remember, I actually have finally made the decision to sell my MP36 because I have been afraid to transform him from day one just because he has, Megatron.
Thank you.
Just because he has so much paint on him. And I am just afraid that I'm going to, you know, I've had him since he was released, no damage on him. He looks great. He's always looked great. He's a great toy, but I've never been able to transform him because I'm really scared I'm going to scratch that paint. When I got my MP Ratchet years ago, I got it at a convention. I played with it in the hotel room and I was just being kind of relaxed with it. And I scraped the hell out of the paint on the top of the van. Right. And like now, anytime he's in van mode, he's going to have that big boot of paint. And like, it doesn't bother me that much, but his resale value went from, okay, fine to bleh. So I just finally decided to let that Megatron go.
I will say that Megatron specifically, like, I don't think the paint scrapes that bad on it. Like, I feel like it was worse on again, like you said, like Ratchet or
Mm-hmm.
Inferno, I think was like another one where just
Mm-hmm.
because it was like so like all the flat lines and everything with it that anytime you scraped any of the paint, like you could really just tell. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it makes him look pretty, but yeah, like he is right. Like, cause you just have that like OCD, and I feel like no matter what, like I even this happened to me with the Ultra Magnus, the new one. Like there's like a paint blemish, on his shoulder. And like I'm sure that probably most people couldn't tell, but it bugs me because like somehow my eyes go straight to it every time I
Mm-hmm.
pick it up. Like it's frustrating.
Yeah. No, I think the paint thing is very amusing because I really thought that covered in paint was the best thing. But I think actually using good plastic that looks good on painted is actually the better choice. More colors of plastic on the original molding is actually better.
Yep.
I actually pretty much like tampos too. Those tend to be pretty good. And if you ever end up in the place where you put on water slide decals, those are great too once they're on, but they're torture to put on.
I've tried several times. I can't ever make it work.
Yeah,
They
no,
make
I'm never
such a quality look though. They're pretty much
They do.
tampos when you get them on. They're so good
No.
looking.
I can't do it.
I've got to do it again. I bought my first Beast Drive figure. And Beast Drive figures, I love this thing. This rabbit that turns into a spaceship is so cute, so fun. But he comes with water slide decals. So I'm going to have to take my Saturday to sit down and do water slide decals all day to get them on him. And they will look good. I am that obsessive that they will, but they're going to be hard to do. Be careful what you wish for because he's going to look good. It's going to be a lot of work.
I like to kind of bring things to a little bit of a close here.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now.
Oh, me too.
Me too.
I'm not saying this is a golden age, but I mean between what we get in Masterpiece, what we're getting from the regular main line, definitely what we're getting from third party. There's a lot of variety out there. Not all of it's great. I've talked about today some of the ones that I thought were trash from modern toys that are coming out, but I think we're getting more good quality toys that we'll look back on 5 or 10 years and think of very highly than not. So I'm happy with where we're on. I do also want to say, like, I think the Netflix era of toys, the War for Cybertron, like that was another kind of both step forward and step back. I mean, Anna, to your point about like getting tired of the same designs, like the fact that you had basically remolds of toys from one wave to another was for so many figures that just hurt. And you had so many repaints. And I get it, you're doing Seekers. I get it, you're doing Sideswipe and all his repaints. But it just hurt that line, I think, significantly from, is this a toy that'll be replaced 5 years from now? Yeah, probably.
Again, in a vacuum, if Christian and I have talked about how many Siege figures we've had to replace, right? Or not even had to, it just naturally happened. It was like, I have this Siege Starscream, but Earthrise Starscream looks so much better, so I should have that, or maybe Chair Starscream, whatever. But I think in a vacuum, if we didn't get the new toys afterwards, those were good toys by themselves.
Yeah.
They were well made. They were fun Transformers. They were good toys. It's just they literally got replaced by their own successors a couple of years later.
Well, I think those ones to me just weren't different enough, and they came out like too soon.
The next year, yeah.
The fact that it came out the next year. I think that, like, I think if the Cybertron ones were more Cybertronian or more alien looking, like, I think I would have liked it more.
And that's happening now in the Origins line. I mean, it's one figure a year, but like that's what Siege should have been.
Right. Yeah, no, like that's super cool. Like, you know, you love getting Jazz and Wheeljack and Bumblebee or whatever. Like that's what. Yeah, I agree.
But you can't throw those Origins dudes with your Siege dudes because that's a different Cybertronian design. So like it doesn't even work that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Earthrise and Kingdom made Siege a slap in the face and irrelevant.
I'm mixing my Origins guys, my Siege guys, and my Bumblebee movie guys together. And they're going to make a good Cybertronian variety show.
You disgust me.
I try. I try.
Please, no, I'm kidding.
Nope, I'm coming to your house right now.
We can't tell because the expression on her face has exactly been the same the whole time. You look for
he's actually not frozen right now.
Grumpy.
Just grumpy old man, Phil.
Actually, on the feed right now, you're not frozen. Ironically,
you were. He froze up for a minute.
I agree with Phil that right now is a really fantastic level of quality.
Right.
It really is.
We've got a lot of paint. We've got a lot of articulation. We've got a lot of this looks like it was in the show stuff going on. And that's what I value. And I think that was Lucas's very original point when he and I talked about this the other day. That quality really can depend, at least the subjective level of it. No, sorry, the objective level of it. No, subjective. Excuse me. I'm tired. It can depend on what you value. Like if you value diecast and a bunch of paint, this is not quality to you. You want to go back to 84. If you value articulation and likeness, then welcome to now.
This is pretty good, yeah.
If you value playsets and kid features, go back to Armada. That's great quality for you.
Yeah, and Ryan brings up he says he doesn't think that any of the Hasbro figures have a proper paint finish, and I do agree. Like, I mean, there is minimal paint on a lot of them. Like, they essentially put paint to get the deco right, to make them accurate, but it's not necessarily that there's like a ton of paint. However, there's an official like MDLX line from 3.0 that is freaking fantastic. Like, and those are original designs that are, Cybertronian G1, I guess, would you call it, or whatever. Like, so it's like, if that's what you really want, like you got it. Like, that's the thing that's cool about the era now is that, it's like, if you want masterpiece figures, like, you can collect that. If you want third party stuff, like, you can collect it. Like, there's just so many options that people have, that we never had before. And yeah, like I do agree too, that I think that Hasbro, in my opinion, for the main line is like kind of hitting that, the price point and level of quality of like what I prefer, and so that's the thing is that, yeah, like it could be, they could make $100 figures or $80 figures or whatever, and it would be higher quality than what they are. But then they could also, again, like some of the cheaper things you can see in the main kids line where it's like, well, I don't really want that. I got a couple of those Cyberverse deluxe figures that you're showing off, Anna. I was like, what, this is not for me. Oh yeah, and then Ron brings up about Takara, that they're bringing out a lot of premium finish figures too. Like, that's fantastic. Like, I love that Takara is now doing that again, because like, back in the day, like a lot of times you would be getting the Takara figure over the Hasbro figure just because you knew it was going to be a better deco, and they're doing that again.
I think it just, the kind of bummer about that though is that the first couple premium finish figures we got were those Siege figures, and they actually didn't really look better. they were like more space mudded than the originals we got. So I think that almost made us expect, okay, you know, they're going to do a couple of these. They're not going to be great. And then the Beast Wars stuff started coming out, and it was just the LG figures all over again. It was just like, here they took already good figures and then added paint to make them from a like static shelf appearance, not articulation, not transformation level, but a static shelf appearance, almost look as good as the MP Beast Wars figures, right? Like they just painted the crap out of those things. And it was kind of a bummer because it blindsided us. Because, you know, here we had all the Beast Wars figures from Kingdom. It was like, oh no, these look so much better.
We're halfway through those sets now, or at least I am. I've got 4 sets, and they're all magnificent.
They look so good.
Well, the 3 sets I've opened. I have not opened Tigertron and Black Arachnia yet. But they are here.
The Tigertron's a big deal because he no longer looks like weird smoke-stained Tigertron.
I'm very excited about that. I will get to him soon. I've been focused on other things the past couple weeks.
It was one of a friend of the show who was not happy with that premium finish Black Arachnia's legs and wanted the one from the Buzzworthy Bumblebee that I had a spare that I shipped down to him that you were mentioned in his address label, Christian.
Oh, right. Yes. I got to figure out what to do with that because I did swap legs between the Kingdom and the Buzzworthy one. So now I got to figure out what to do as I replace Kingdom with premium finish.
I think there was someone in our chat that called her Peg Bundy Black Arachnia, and that was brilliant.
Yeah, because of the print.
Yeah, the leopard
on her clothes. Yeah, it's so funny. I love it. Yeah. It's perfect. That's who she is for me forever.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess I think we've done a decent job of covering the topic here. So
we're at 90 minutes. That's like our goal. So it's perfect.
There you go. So appreciate you guys joining me tonight. Thanks to everyone in the chat who participated. Don't forget to join us for book club Sunday night at 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern on the TF Talk Discord. And apparently you're going over Transformers 13 and 14 and then whatever the new IDW, whatever it's called.
Yep, and IDW, the New World. So. It's fun. It's a fun thing to read. Check it out if you want to. Do you really think that? Because you gave up on... I do. Okay. All right, good. Good. Maybe we should talk about that as a topic soon.
Like sorry, what did you say again, Christian? I missed that.
That IDW3 is probably better than Skybound.
Oh, no.
I think when Skybound gets to 6, because I'm pretty sure, because we're switching artists, that they're going to finish the story. I would like to do a show comparing comic universes and comics again, talking about Skybound and how it lives with the other Transformers series.
I'll see you. I think it would be fun.
Yeah, 2 months.
Is there supposed to be a HasLab?
Yes, Lucas.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
what they're talking about on Tuesday at the stream.
Oh, yeah. So okay, you picked up that there was a stream coming, but the stream is about the HasLab.
Oh,
yes, the stream is about the HasLab.
Whew. I didn't realize. I don't know. I guess I totally missed that it was a HasLab.
The stream has.
We can talk about that.
The stream advertisement just says Transformers 40th as one logo, and below it HasLab. So 40th anniversary HasLab.
All right. So what's your prediction then?
I thought we were done, Lucas.
Yeah, we're done. We'll talk about that next week.
Ron threw it out there.
We're just giving the fans what they want.
I think it's going to be a giant human-size version of Optimus Prime's gun. I think it's going to be his big ion gun thingy in human size.
That's for a while.
That's what I think it's going to be. That's my prediction. Lucas, it was your idea. Give a prediction.
All right, so my prediction is Devastator.
Which
Devastator.
The G1 Devastator.
all right. Just checking.
Bill.
I'd like to see a new rail racer.
Hellraiser. Woo.
Be a good one.
Christian.
I don't have one. I've seen some rumors flying about, and I think they're probably true. But if I had my druthers, I'd like to see a human scale Allspark cube from the 07 movie. You're muted.
Don't they have to just like Borg like spaceships you can buy? Pretend
Do they?
Probably.
If they do, I will do that. That sounds like a great idea. I really would like to have that. Like truly, that's a landmark artifact in Transformers history, and I would like to have it, boom, here where I can hold it.
Yeah. All right, there's your predictions, Lucas. We did it.
What
We
were the
predicted
actual
it.
like rumors or whatever? Was it Omega Supreme?
No, it's not Omega
You're close.
Supreme. The last thing they said, it's Omega level, which to me means it's Omega Prime from Robots in Disguise.
Okay,
Mhm.
got it. Fair enough.
That's my actual prediction.
There we go. All right, cool.
They're
All
not
right.
making an Omega Supreme again. No.
I don't know. All right.
They redid it
enough.
last year.
Thanks, guys. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you. Sorry, Christian. Like, should we mention some G.I. Joe to just get you to turn it off?
God, no.
All right. Bye.
Cobra
Thanks,
Commander.
everyone. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.